All right. Good evening, everybody. Hello to everybody watching online. Are we ready to get started with this thing tonight? All right. Well, welcome to Our Watch with Tim Thompson. And it's not with Tim Thompson tonight. So tonight, it's Our Watch with Don Dix. He was here with us last week interviewing Tim Thompson. And tonight, he is going to be our guest interviewer. We're always blessed to have him here with us. Tonight, our guests are Dr. Mark McDonald and Mike Alexander, and they're going to be talking about some very important facts about schooling and your children in the school systems. I'll let Don Dix give more of an introduction about what they're going to be talking about, and it's really, really important. Good thing that you're here tonight. Good thing that you're watching. Thank you for joining us. Would you join me as we pray for tonight's program? Heavenly Father, we're just so grateful to come together here in your house and talk about things that really matter to you and in turn matter to us because it affects our children. It affects the things that go on in the society and in the public square. And we're all here to be educated in a way that can equip us with the information that we need to be able to take back the public square and make an influence on it through our Christian mindset, our worldview. And we're just so grateful for our guest tonight, and we ask that you bless the conversation and the rest of the evening, and that it would go far and wide and reach everybody that you want it to reach, and it will make an impact. And we ask all this in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so again, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting Our Watch. We appreciate your partnership. There's a lot of topics that we're able to bring to the forefront. Education, information that you need to know, and like I said, it can help equip all of us to be able to use our voices out in the world today. And so today, we're going to be getting that information that's going to help out, which is really going to be effective for our kids. So anyways, we're going to take an offering. If you're willing and able to participate in that, we're very grateful. You can also go to the website to do that as well. It's ourwatchnow.com. You can feel free to donate if you're so inclined to do that, and you can get more information about what we've got coming up in the future as well. So as always, just a reminder to follow Our Watch on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. All the other social media profiles as well, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, Facebook. He's still there. We're still there. So give us a follow. And now we're going to be getting started here in just a moment. And then Don Dix will come out. So sit back and relax and enjoy Our Watch.
This past year, the radical left with their globalist mindset has burned down our cities, forced businesses to close, and tried to silence our churches. They told us to wear a mask and stay home to save lives, and many Christians remain silent. That is no longer an option. The silent majority will be silent no more, and the sleeping giant has been awakened. We are going to use our voice to take back the media, stop the censorship, and very loudly take back the public square. I'm Tim Thompson, and this is Our Watch.
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I can see a lot of you are wearing your green. Everybody's got, those that don't get pinched tonight. I think that's what happens. Welcome to Our Watch with Pastor Tim Thompson. As some of you know, I am not Tim Thompson. If this is your first time here or you're watching for the first time as we stream tonight's program, my name is Don Dix. I'm the co-host of the Jen and Don Show, heard nightly on AM 590 The Answer, and also host of a program that airs on the second and fourth Thursday of the night on Zoomland called Town Hall Central. Not only is it St. Patrick's Day, but what else is today? It was the last day to get your signatures in to recall Governor Newsom, right? So hopefully everybody here has already signed that and gotten that done. Now, there are a lot of reasons to recall Governor Newsom. An insurmountable number. We could spend the rest of tonight's program just itemizing those. For instance, infrastructure. We're the last state in terms of quality of life. But there's one area that I think is probably the most important area that we rank in the bottom 20% of the entire country, and that's education. Our most precious resource in this country is our youth. And it's sad to say that the Golden State isn't golden when it comes to educating our students. But we are first in two very important areas. Anybody know what those are? Taxes and debt. We have the largest public pension debt of any state in the country. Two things that I think we can be proud of being first in, not really. So we are one of the last states in the country to actually restart education. And it's and distance learning may have placed an insurmountable obstacle to our youth. We're going to dig into that tonight. We're going to talk about the impact of distance learning and what it's done to the youth of America and the youth here in California. And then we're going to talk about a solution, something that I think is very exciting. I think it can be a game changer, and I'm depending on every one of you that's here, as well as those of you that are watching at home, to get involved in the next opportunity that we have to put a proposition on the ballot that'll be coming up. We've got two guests tonight to explore that. Before I do, I want to familiarize you with something that's happening up in Sacramento right now. It is a brand new element of our curriculum that's coming at us, and this is so harmful, I think, and see if you agree that I think this is just another reason to get involved in the ballot measure that we're going to be talking about tonight. On March 5th, the California Department of Education released a fourth draft of something called Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. Now, if you have kids in school, this is something you really need to understand and share with your neighbors, and if you have grandkids. I mean, we need to get this out, because next week there's actually going to be a vote on this. A former piece of legislation actually was on the governor's desk, but he wouldn't sign it because it didn't go far enough. Wait till you hear. This is political indoctrination traditionally limited to higher education. Based on Marxist and critical race theories, the curriculum views history and society through a racial lens, connecting educational institutions to the revolutionary overthrow of the systems of this country. Think about that for just a moment. It highlights militant movements such as violent role models to encourage students to radically transform or destroy what they call the neo-colonial systems of oppression. That's what we are. That's what America is, a neo-colonial system of oppression. Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum seeks to extend the left's the left's cultural dominance of California public university system to the state's entire primary and secondary education system, which consists of 10,000 public schools serving 6 million students. In theoretical terms, so here we go. The new ethnic studies curriculum is based on the pedagogy of the oppressed, developed by a Marxist theoretician who argued that students must be educated about their oppression in order to attain critical consciousness. I mean, this is just some gobbledygook, and consequently develop the capacity to overthrow their oppressors. Students in America, the youth in America is oppressed, and they need to learn how to overthrow their oppressors. All right. Who are the oppressors? Following this dialectic, the model curriculum instructs teachers to help students challenge racist, bigoted, and discriminatory imperialist colonial beliefs and critique white supremacy, racism, and other forms of power and oppression. This approach, in turn, enables teachers to inspire after all that, now we're going to inspire them, right? To inspire their pupils to participate in social movements that struggle for social justice and build new possibilities for a post-racist, post-systemic racist society. Next week, the California Department of Education that advocates for the decolonization of American society elevates a variety of religious symbolism, not Christian, like Aztec, all in the service of a left-wing political ideology. Now, no surprise, when parents and California residents had the opportunity to write in to oppose this or to offer over 100 substantial adjustments to this curriculum, the California Department of Education ignored all of it. So this is coming at us this fall, if it passes. Now, we've got two guests tonight. The first is Dr. Mark McDonald, and he's here to help us understand a lot about the physical and mental damage inflicted on the youth by these lockdowns. He's a trained adult and child adolescent adult and child adolescent psychiatry at UCLA, achieved double board certification, later trained adult psychoanalyst for 8 years. He now specializes in child and adolescent psychiatry. Please welcome Dr. Mark McDonald. And by the way, if you've heard of America's Frontline Doctors, Dr. McDonald is the psychiatrist of America's Frontline Doctors.
Correct.
Great to have you with us. All right. Now, Michael Alexander is our other guest, and so this is kind of a 1-2 punch into the whole area of education. He's a graduate of USC. How many folks here are USC supporters? None. Aren't you glad, Mike? He's the managing principal of a private trust company and the founder and president of the California School Choice Foundation. His organization is preparing a California School Choice initiative for the 2022 statewide ballot that will create an educational savings account for each K through 12 child in California to be used at the school of the parent's choice. Please give a big welcome to Michael Alexander. It's great to have you with us. Both of you guys, both of you guys had a long drive down from the LA area, and so we're so glad to have you with us to explore two really important topics. Let's start with you, Dr. McDonald. Let's talk about what you have seen unfold in your practice regarding the impact of this distance learning and all that goes with it.
Well, Don, what I've said from the very beginning since April of 2020 is that this decision made on a local, state, and ultimately national level to close the nation's schools, all the way up to the collegiate level, was the biggest mistake that was made in the government response to this viral pandemic. The biggest. I lost my very first patient in 10 years of practice the week that the schools shut down. Fentanyl overdose. She had enrolled in a master's program in therapy at Antioch College, and she had been free for 4 years of opiate abuse. She had a sponsor, she was going to meetings, she had a boyfriend, she had a job. The day the school shut down, everything changed for her. She lost her program, she couldn't go to her meetings, her boyfriend left her, and she didn't have access to her family because they had moved away. So she was stuck at home alone and depressed, sad. She began to crave that comfort of using drugs again. She was not suicidal, but she had a dealer bring her what she thought was some standard Percocet, standard street opiate. Turned out to be fentanyl. She took 2 milligrams, fatal dose, died alone in her apartment. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I lost my second patient, who was 15 years old, the son of Dr. Laura Berman of Santa Monica. He had been shut out of school for a year and had been sheltering at home to follow our mayor, Eric Garcetti's safer at home order, and was bored because he couldn't play football. He didn't have anything to do. So he went on his phone and he ordered what he thought was a Xanax off of Snapchat. And he had a dealer deliver one pill to his house while his parents were downstairs making burgers. His father went upstairs to check on him after lunch and found his son face down, blue, in a pool of his own vomit. He was dead in 20 minutes. The Xanax that he ordered had a fine dust coating of fentanyl on it. And all you need is 2 milligrams for a fatal dosage, and he was gone. These bookended deaths, the 2 deaths that I saw between March and then 3 weeks ago in my practice, were the most horrific that I've seen in my whole career. But in between that, what I've seen is a constant, unending wave of desperation, of phobic panic attacks, of self-harming behaviors, of children attacking one another at home, hitting their heads against the wall, punching through plate glass windows, being sent to emergency rooms for 3-5-day holds, and the parents are beside themselves. They don't know what to do. God forbid you have a child who's autistic, who has some kind of behavioral problem, who isn't just an ADHD kid, like the boy that died. There really isn't any recourse when you're stuck at home. I have been trying to say this and to speak to this for almost a year, and it's only in the last month or two that I'm starting to see mainstream media and larger non-esoteric groups of people come together and actually reinforce what I'm saying as being true. It is my belief, my firm belief, that it is now, after 1 year of having schools shut down, we have a society which will actually develop into an entire generation of traumatized children. We have babies who, for the last year, haven't seen a human face other than eyes. And you need to see faces in order to recognize expressions and develop feelings. We're developing a generation of autistic children by blocking their brain from developing, as well as socialization problems with older kids. There's no way to fix this. There's no way to undo this. Regardless of what we do now, we're going to be living with this consequence for decades. And the people, the parents, the adults who allowed this to happen will never forgive themselves. I can't even put words to the depth of the problem from the school closures on an emotional level. And I'm not even getting into the problems of all the physical issues. So Don, this problem of school closures is not just lost education, it's not just boredom, it's not just kids getting fat, it's kids dying and kids being permanently damaged in their development in ways that will likely never really be able to recover from.
Now, the president of the National Teachers Union had been on TV and was asked about this in an interview and said, children are resilient, they'll bounce back. What would be your response to her?
When you scratch yourself, you develop a scab, and then your skin recovers. If you scratch yourself again and again and again and again and again, you all know what happens. You don't develop a scab, you develop a scar. And scar tissue on the skin is always weaker than real skin. It's always prone to getting torn, ripped, reopening. We all know that. We've all had that experience. We all have some scar of one another, either on our skin or in our psyche. The idea that you can close a school, schools, plural, for an entire year and then just bounce back, like bending a piece of plastic and letting it bounce back. You bend, you bend, you bend. Eventually, we all know it doesn't bounce back. We've reached way beyond that point. I don't know when it was. Was it month 2? Was it month 3? I don't know the answer to that, but I know in month 13, we're well past the point of bouncing back. There is no bounce back at this point.
Now, we had a conversation before tonight, and homeschooling came up, and there's a lot of people out there that have never gotten into homeschooling, and there's a narrative right now that, well, what these kids have been through is just like homeschooling, and if homeschooling isn't so bad, then this can't be that bad. So unpack that a little bit for us.
I have not been, admittedly, the most strong supporter of homeschooling for many years, mainly because I didn't know much about it. I know more about it now, although I wouldn't consider myself an expert. And even what modest amount of knowledge I have about homeschool makes it very clear to me that Zoom school and homeschool have absolutely nothing to do with one another. Yeah. Just to point out a few obvious, or maybe not so obvious, but clear differences. Zoom school occurs at home, just like homeschooling does, but it occurs in front of a screen. There is no teacher in the home. The teacher is in her home or his home, and they're teaching remotely. And there's no direct interaction with the student. It's a broadcast. There's no coming back to the teacher. Most of the screens are off. There's very little time to interact. The kids are sleeping, they're bored, they're distracted. So that's the biggest difference up front. There's also absolutely no socialization whatsoever in Zoom school. None. There's no activities, there's no sports, there's no outings, there's nothing. That does occur in homeschool. There's also the problem of children being in a home that may not actually be supportive of Zoom school. There may be parents who aren't there, there may be somebody who's there that shouldn't be there may be abuse, there may be drugs, there may not be food. So the idea that you can just substitute a school environment for a remote learning environment is a joke. The LA County system, which after long argument and long last week agreed to reopen their schools, reopened them under the pretext that schools will be back in session. But what they're doing now is taking kids and going to school with the kids 2 days a week, putting them in front of a screen with noise-canceling headphones, and then the teacher is teaching from home. So it's Zoom school from school. So now we're getting even third-party removed. So I can just on that brief description, I think it can be made pretty clear to anyone that choosing to homeschool a student, if done properly, really doesn't resemble Zoom school in any way, shape, or form.
Lastly, you sent me an article. We had Dr. McDonald on one of our Thursday night sessions on Town Hall Central. And I had never seen this, but in the journal, New England Journal of Medicine, was a study that talked about not just the health and the mental impact, but setting all that aside that you said, there's a whole different impact that this is having, potentially shortening lifespans. Share with us a little bit about what that study found.
This study, which is very mathematically driven, and there's no point in going into the stats and how they compiled it, but what they found essentially was that keeping students at home, keeping them away from school, children, actually shortens their lifespan. It actually takes months or years off of their life. And this result is very much in sync with what was found in the recently published German database in Germany of over 25,000 entries by over 15,000 parents who had their kids have to stay at home or wear masks, and found that the staying at home or the mask wearing was actually contributing in almost 70% of the cases to an increase in severe side effects and symptoms like anxiety, depression, not wanting to go to school, crying, bedwetting, that sort of thing. So international and domestic and international studies are all showing the same thing in different facets, different lenses, which is that students are being hurt physically and emotionally by being kept at home or being forced to wear masks or both.
Wow. Horrific. Okay, I got to share a little inside baseball with you guys. When I first had the opportunity to be, my background is not broadcasting, it's not politics. I was a financial planner for 25 years. That was my background. So it really does, God has a sense of humor. She said, you need to be over here behind this microphone. So in November of 2013, we started a half-hour radio show on that very same station, AM 590, and our very first guest was this gentleman sitting to my right, your left, who came in and educated me on something that has stuck with me ever since. And he introduced me to what he calls the crisis of citizenship in this country. So, Mike, unpack that a little bit for us. Tell us about the crisis of citizenship.
Well, thank you, Don. Can you hear me all right, everybody out there? All right. The crisis of citizenship is our key problem. If you look throughout well, let me start this somewhere else. Let's start it in the context of this problem that we're facing. It's not a medical problem. It's a political problem, right? What we've had, obviously has medical implications. So does every other stupid thing that these people do. But what we have here is the spectacle of us parents, grandparents, citizens, sitting here arguing with these people with subthermal IQs about our children and our money. Now, that's about the least American thing I can think of. So who's letting this happen? Well, the answer is us. We talk about democracy. We talk about a Republican form of government. We talk about the fact that our government derives its very legitimacy from the consent of the governed. It derives its power from you, not from itself, which means that to be a citizen of the United States, the greatest privilege since Rome, the highest honor that anybody can have bestowed upon them, entails responsibilities. And when we abdicate our responsibilities, whether it's as parents, as parishioners, congregants, citizens, when we abdicate those responsibilities, there's always somebody there to fill that vacuum. Could be a drug dealer, could be a pimp, could be a pornographer, or somebody that wraps all three up into one, somebody from government, right? Right? They are the worst of the worst. They are the distillation of evil, but as St. Thomas Aquinas once said, good Catholic boy over here too, evil is not an affirmative thing. It represents the absence of good. So when we look at government and we see the bad things that it does, what it is, what it represents, what it reflects is our failure to do the right thing. And when we look at our country and we talk among ourselves, we say, who agrees with this nonsense? Who is really going along with it? And yet we sit here like good Germans, good Russians, good Chinese, and now the next phrase will be good Americans, just sitting here taking the data feed from these idiots and going along with it, when all we need to do is to say no to these people, all right? But we can't sit here and say no. We can't go on talk radio or pretend to listening to Rush, God rest his soul, Mark Levin or any of these other people, or even listening to the amazing real Don Dix.
Oh, stop.
Constitutes the exercise of citizenship. It is merely the predicate of citizenship. You must move forward. And so the question is, what are we going to do about this situation that we find ourselves in with a government that has taken the consent that we conferred upon it at the ballot box and under our Constitution, disregarded our will, and have run off the constitutional map? Only we up here can turn this thing around. And it is not impossible. Look what they did. By the way, all these people had a big anniversary 3 years ago, 1917 to 2017. Did you ever see such a remarkable example of persistence as the communist left in our country? These people dug in. They never quit. They didn't fail to run. They didn't fail to argue. They didn't fail to be active because they were losing. They waited, and they waited, and now they're here. But we can send them all away very quickly. Did you want to ask another question, Don?
Well, no, I want to qualify a little bit of
Yes.
the conversation. You mentioned talk radio. and other things. One of the problems I have with talk radio, and I try to bridge this gap a little bit, is that none of them, as you said, Rush, God rest his soul, all the great talkers, great information, tell us what to do.
Yes.
We don't get solutions from them. We get exploration and commentary on the problems.
Correct.
And this is one of the things that you, in that moment of interviewing you, when you said we have a crisis of citizenship, I felt like the button had gotten pushed and I went, that's it. We're going to use our show from this point, especially our Saturday show, to help people understand how to get in the game.
Correct.
Now, something happened recently. There was a fella on, and I'm going to go out of the conversation to bring it back into what you're doing with the school choice proposition ballot initiative. There was a gentleman on the War Room a couple of weeks ago by the name of Dan Schultz. And now that I have a little bit more of a public profile and people know who I am, that I'm involved with the Republican Party here in Riverside County, I got at least a dozen calls from people that saw Dan Schultz on the War Room talking about this position called precinct committee person. Now, in Arizona, where he's from, precinct committee person is an elected office in Arizona, where you actually work within your neighborhood in order to build a political infrastructure. And there's Republican, as well as Democrat, as well as, I guess, any other party, precinct committee people that are elected for those roles. Here in California, we don't have that. We have a county party that I'm not going to go into right now because we got to talk about but having that in place, this permanent political infrastructure with people who understand what you're saying, in a way addresses this crisis of citizenship. And as Judge Brandeis said, the most important political office in the entire country is private citizen. It creates a fabric and a connection within the neighborhood of each other. Because here in California, I mean, you get 6 doors down, a couple streets over. We don't know who those people are. What we need to do is create that connective tissue. And so what you're going to tell us about now is a way for us to create that connective tissue in our neighborhood using the school choice ballot initiative as a way to create that opportunity. Tell us about the ballot initiative that you're working on.
I will, but I want to go back to the important point that you raised. And I'd ask all of you here for just a few moments to forget all you think you know about politics. And let me tell you why you've been losing. Most Republicans and conservatives tend to believe that what we need is better ideas, which we have, better programs, better candidates, more skill in the ability to articulate our arguments. And if we just have that, over time, the right thing will come through because America ultimately makes the right decisions. No, it doesn't. You know, we're 30 years after Ronald Reagan, and we are in terrible, terrible shape. It's getting to be longer than that. So what are we up against? What is the secret of the left? Is it ideology? No, it's not, because we have superior ideas. We can communicate them. What is it? What they are is 2 things that we aren't. They are organized, and they are extravagantly well financed. We, on our side, are fractured, dispersed, disorganized, often balkanized, every bit as much as those whack jobs on the left. Balkanized, and we are not financed. Now, I'm not pitching you for money here, but I'll put a question to you, a rhetorical question. There are 5 million Republicans in this state. There's another 2 million people, independents, that agree the same with us. If each of those 5 million Republicans were contributing as little as $100 per year per person, $500 million a year, $1 billion every 2 years, would California look like it does?
No.
No, Professor. They wouldn't look a bit like we do. They, on the other hand, let's just take the cartel, the teacher, so-called teacher union cartel. 350,000 members claim to be teachers. Question, side note, if you don't teach, can you properly be called a teacher? But I digress. 350,000 of them contribute $1,000 a year. Now, even if you went to one of their schools and you can't calculate that, whip out your Obama phone, do the numbers, right? That 350,000 comes to $350 million just out of them. Every year, 700 million, and as Justice Gorsuch pointed out, all that money is ultimately available for politics. Those 350,000 members are spread out over 10,000 public school institutions. Now, this is just the teachers. This is just the teachers' unions. That means they got 35 of them average in every primary, elementary, middle, high school, or whatever the rest of those prison situations happen to be called, all right? So those public detention centers they call public schools, they got 35 of them, like cockroaches, spread out all over the state. Now, what do we have? Nothing. What group in this parish, or excuse me, this congregation, or my parish, where I come from in Pasadena, what group is there dedicated to pushing back on this ultimate issue? So as we approach this at California School Choice Foundation, my first job is really not to pass school choice, is it? The first thing I've got to do is to get organized, because if I'm not organized, if we don't have somebody in every parish, every school, every congregation, every affinity organization, if we don't have somebody everywhere just like they do, we might get it on the ballot, but we're not going to win it. And if we do happen to win it, we're not going to be able to keep it, now are we? So our first job is to organize. It has very little, my appearance here tonight has very little to do with school choice, which everybody in this room is ready to bring the hammer down to get your kids, get your money, and get the heck out. That's what you want to do. So tonight is about informing you and arousing you about and getting you enthusiastic about going back at these people, and nothing strikes back at them like taking your children back. They're not my kids. These are not public kids. They're not part of the great Soviet enterprise here. They are your children, your grandchildren. So as we say, it's your kids, it's your money, and therefore it's your choice. You'll find out how many of those people are really pro-choice now, right? So
isn't school choice legal in California, though?
Sure it is, yes. If you got the money and you got the desire, you can go pick a school. But what you can't do is to take your money, they call it public money, right? There's the fraud, the hustle, and the con. They steal the money from you, and they claim it's public money. You go to get your money or your kid back, and you're told no to both, right? And oh, by the way, we say, well, I just take my kid out. No, you won't. We'll bust you and the kid for truancy, right? Find them apples. And if you don't put the kids in school, that's a form of child abuse and neglect, right? As compared to what, but if we leave them home with you, if it's the schools, you call it distance learning, as the good doctor explained here. Well, now suddenly that's not abuse, that's public health, public policy. There you go. So we have organized the California School Choice Foundation. For all of you who have access to computers, that's californiaschoolchoice.org. Please go there. And you'll find that our basic proposal has 4 key features. An education savings account will be created for each K-12 child in California. That's number 1. Number 2, that child will be credited in his savings account with an amount equal to his pro rata share of what are known as Prop 98 funds. That's a basic funding mechanism under the California Constitution. That is currently $12,500 and rising because of increased tax revenues. Number 3, the parents, not the politicians, will be able to direct that money either to the existing public school or charter school or an accredited private school, and hang on to your comfort dogs, liberals, an accredited religious or parochial school, right? And
That would be great.
that would be it. And number 4, and this is the key most important provision actually, is that you can keep any money you have left over, save it for college of your choice, vocational training, or other qualified educational expense. Now, that's the key part because that creates competition both in the private sector of education and in the public government school sector. We won't call it education. That begs the question. Although there are a few good schools, I got it. But that gives you the choice, and that makes you the sovereign person. We have, I don't need to tell you people here in this congregation, you know that we've all been under assault for decades. And the major attack has been on the family, which is a fundamental institution in society. It's not government. The state exists to support the family so that the parents can properly rear, educate, and morally form their own children. The state is not there as a substitute parent or substitute anything. It is there merely to create the conditions under which this family, which is in itself a perfect self-contained society, can thrive. And our problems in our country are many, but I submit to all of you here that they began 100 years ago when we first, as a society, turned over our children to the government for this thing they're pleased to call education. And we're not even going to begin to turn this country around unless we first take back our children, take back their hearts, their minds, their souls, and, dare I say, our money, and educate our own children as God gives us the light to do so.
I want to talk about that deserves. I want to talk about the timeline of this and how it gels with the election in 2022 and the current recall effort. But I want to go back to Dr. McDonald and ask you, given what has transpired over the last year, which is turbocharging what's been happening, as Mike said, this assault on the family. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in your practice as it relates to the family unit. What's happening with the family unit from a standpoint of it being the building block of this country, the nuclear family?
Well, just as Mike was saying, that the family is really what needs to be supported by the state. What I see right now in my practice, which is primarily families or their children, is the antithesis of that. I see the family under attack, under assault. I see husband turning against wife, wife turning against husband, parent against child. I spoke with a couple recently who refused to bring their 16-year-old to my office in person to receive a refill and a supplemental session, check-in basically, for his ADHD. The mother wouldn't bring him in because she said, "We don't go out much these days." I thought, that's kind of strange. The kid seemed perfectly fine. He seems to go out quite a bit. I asked her again to bring him in. She refused. Eventually, the father sent me an email and said, "I'm so sorry. We're going to have to find another doctor. Thank you so much for taking care of our child for the last 8 years. My wife and I are not on the same page. Please forward the records to the new doctor. I really appreciate your help." He was very apologetic. He was very respectful. And when I read between the lines, what I realized, because I know them both quite well and I've seen them in person for years along with his son, is that his wife has become hysterical. He's maintaining a sense of resilience and calm in the face of her hysteria, but he can't overrule her, because if he brings his kid in, which is the best thing for his kid, he will put his marriage at risk. This is not isolated, and it happens in the reverse too. I had a documentary filmmaker come to see me about a month ago, 60-plus-year-old woman, and she interviewed me about fear, the pandemic of fear. and all of that. And she said, my husband of 40 plus years is a man I don't even know anymore. He sits at home, he watches CNN, he begs me to not go outside without a mask on because he thinks I'm going to die, and he gets angry at me. He thinks I'm crazy. I don't know if I even respect him or love him anymore. I don't know what to do now. I don't know if I should just hope he gets better and recovers in a year, or whether I need to divorce him. Sitting at the other side of the room was her daughter, young woman, completely aware of what was going on with the mother, just recently married a year ago and got her therapist license. And she nodded her head and then calmly looked at me and said, the same thing is happening to me. I said, what did you mean? She said, the man that I married is so scared to death to go out of the house. He doesn't want me to leave the house, doesn't want me to do therapy except over Zoom. I'm only into this marriage 1 year, and I don't know if I want to stay in it.
Wow.
So, hysterical women, men who lack courage, cowards and hysterics. And I'm not singling out either sex. I'm saying these are the weaknesses that can be inherent in all people, and they're being exacerbated, being dug in like a thumb into a bullet wound by the state, and it's destroying relationships. And I'm just talking about husband-wife right now, but it goes all over the map. So these relationships that I see in my practice, that they're not even coming in for the relationship, I'm just seeing it, are being corroded. They're being like metal being left in the rain, just rusting away because the state and the government response to this virus is getting in between and cutting all the linkages.
Wow. Yeah, the breakdown of the family. It's what made America strong, and it's what is taking America down in historical proportions. The timeline, what is,
Yes.
how does this school choice ballot initiative roll out?
Okay, thank you, Don. The timeline is essentially this. The election will be held in November 2022. That's about 18, 20 months from now. An initiative, this initiative will amend the California Constitution. To do that requires just under 1 million valid signatures. To be on the safe side, we will gather 1.5x, that is 1.5 million, we'll go 50% higher. Those signatures need to be obtained within 180 days from the time of the receipt of what they call the title and summary, and we're hoping that Becerra will be out of town by that time. He's truly, maybe we'll get it written by a bureaucrat instead of an autocrat. But that process and all the signatures need to be done and in more or less by end of May or June of 2022, so they can be checked. So we're going backward, all right?
Yep.
Which means that we're going to have to submit our request for title and summary, our version of this initiative, somewhere around June or July of this year. So in the meantime, let me take this opportunity also to talk about timelines and how and why conservative initiatives very often fail. What happens very often is that someone will get a good idea, maybe even a great idea like the one we're talking about. They get a little bit of money together, then they go find a sugar daddy or sugar mama or one of each, and they get enough money to push it. Maybe they go out and collect enough money to actually purchase enough signatures, and they submit it. Now we're down to, like we said, May or June of election year. Well, now they're exhausted, and they focused all their efforts on just getting it on the ballot, but they haven't done any real grassroots organization. All they've done is raise money and give it to people who go out and hang around grocery stores. All right, that's not political organization. So they don't really start
Right.
Until the grassroots organization to maybe mid or late summer. It's too late. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to win this thing, we start right now. We start right here in Murrieta. What's the name of this wonderful place? The 412
Church.
Right. 412 Church, and every other place we can find people. and you need to go to, well, hey, Dr. Dale Broom, are you out there, sir?
He's actually.
He's in surgery out there extracting signatures. Oh, okay, I wanted to. Hey, there's Dr. Dale Broom. Our big hand for him. He is our San Bernardino County Chairman. A part-time physician, full-time school choice advocate. Actually, he's got a full-time practice to boot. But in any event, he's here tonight. He has signature pages. All of you out there in TV land, go to californiaschoolchoice.org, then download the petition. There's a place to sign. Sign our pre-petition. Let us know who you are, right? Indicate your support for that. Give me a little love, too, a couple of bucks a month. Reason why? I'll take your little bucks, and I'll go get big bucks with them. Because the guys and gals with the big bucks want to know that they're not the only people in the game. They want to know that their support, and so nothing talks like a few dollars. So I need to go tell them I've got 10, 50, or 100,000 people that are kicking in $2, $5, $10, $20 a month, just like the cartel, right? Only at a lower level.
I like that.
Right.
Take a minute,
yes,
because
sir.
we've only got 5 minutes left.
Yes.
Take a minute and tell us about how much leverage this is going to have in terms of what the school unions will put up in order to stop this. So,
oh, yeah.
So talk about that factor.
Sure, yeah, in 60 seconds or less. The right, the ability to control your money, 40% of the tax dollar here in California, and your child means that they control the future. This has always been the goal of every totalitarian. They will not let it go. Once we get this on the ballot, every communist from Putin to Pelosi will be out there running, knocking on doors to defeat this. They will spend $100 to $200 million, and that's good because we want to make them bleed. We need to make them pay. You want our kids, at least make them pay a price.
Right.
Didn't your old man tell you that you're going to get in a fight sometime and you're going to get your backside kicked? But at least I expect you, son, to go out there and fight like a man, fight like an American, fight like a woman for her children.
Right.
So when do we get busy here? So all I can say is fix bayonets. Let's get wet with these people, make them pay a price. I'm done with it.
So we have this overlapping the election that's coming up, and a lot of people don't know they're going to get a ballot at home that's going to have 2 questions on it, because it looks like the ballot it looks like the recall will happen, the signatures will get verified, the election will happen. There'll be 2 questions. Most people in California have no clue they're getting ready to get a ballot. They don't pay attention. You are rare. If you go up and down your street and ask people if they know anything about the recall, most of them, unless you've worked your street, will have no clue. Trust me. There is a high degree of lack of knowledge, technically called ignorance, out there. So while we're out there getting ready, going out neighborhood to neighborhood, letting them know that the election is happening, that little thing that showed up in their mailbox is a real live ballot, not junk mail from the Republican or Democrat Party, we will alert them and at the same time build the infrastructure to be able to get the signatures that are necessary to put this on the ballot.
We're not going to stop. Once you guys get to know each other, you're not working for me or being directed by California school choice. You are Americans getting together, doing what you always do, talking to each other, organizing, and taking collective action without your mama telling you what to do or a bunch of party officials. We citizens, each of us, needs to take ownership again of our own Constitution and our own human and civil rights, exercise them, and go out and persuade your neighbors. Don't be deterred. Say, oh, I don't like to talk politics with them. Well, I don't either, but it looks like politics won't leave us alone. Now, will they?
No.
So it's really not a question of whether you want to have a political conversation. If you don't say anything, those people are there to beat you up.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
Couple minutes left. Final thoughts, Dr. McDonald.
Back to you. Close it. Take us home.
I really like to quote Henry David Thoreau, one of our well-known American authors, when I finish up my thoughts for an interview with the following, which I think is even more important now than it was when he wrote it 100 and such years ago. Now more than ever, it's critical that all of you think for yourself. Because if you don't, others will think for you, and they will not be thinking of you.
Wow. Thank you very
Very
much.
good.
Michael?
All I can say is I can't top that. I'm not in a particularly reflective mode. Combative is it? So I won't compete with the good doctor here. I tell you what, I'll quote a little Latin. Qui tacet, videtur consentire. He who is silent is deemed to have consented. All right? So let's not be silent. Let's make a lot of noise and let these people know that we're not done. America belongs to us. The fight has just begun.
Amen. Dr. McDonald, Michael Alexander, thank you so much for being with us on Our Watch. We will be back next Wednesday night with another great episode of Our Watch. Tune in, 7 o'clock here at 412 Church. Thank you. God bless.